This lesson is called Playing with Style. Now, I included it in this program because beginning trumpet players sometimes focus so much on playing the right notes and not making a mistake that that whole idea of playing enjoyable music gets lost. Admittedly, the songs written for beginning trumpet often don't leave a lot of room for artistic interpretation, and there's only so much you can do with Mary Had a Little Lamb. But I want you to get a sense of some of the things that you can do to play musically, things that go beyond just playing the right notes. Now, I've included a page in your trumpet guidebook called Playing with Style, and it lists some of the markings that you're going to see in your music to help you play with expression. We're also going to look in this lesson at the song Oralee, and it's also in your trumpet guidebook, so be sure to have those two pages open as we go through this lesson. Musicians have the same challenge as an actor reading a script. Actors have to convey the emotions and passions of a character when all they're given really is just a paper with some words written on it in a script. So imagine in Titanic, the guy stands on the front of the ship and he says, "I'm king of the world." Or Nicholson saying, "You can't handle the truth." Did I get the words right? Absolutely. Will I ever get an acting job with that kind of delivery? Not in your life, because there's no feeling, right? As trumpet players, we have that same challenge of taking just markings on a page and deliver it with feeling. A robot or a computer can play the notes on a page, but it really takes the soul of a real person to get beyond just playing the notes. So before we get too far into this, I need to clarify something. As a trumpet player, you need to understand the difference between section playing and solo playing. Now, first, section playing. When you play in a trumpet section, or if you're in any kind of a band, whether it's a concert band or a jazz band, you're going to work with the other players to create a really uniform sound. And that means that as a group or a section, you play the same style, exactly the same tempo, the same volume. You really have to learn to watch the conductor and listen to each other to play together. Now, your director is going to work with you to help you play really what's written on the page, but that's not to say that you can't play musically. Some of the areas that beginning musicians tend to overlook really are a steady tempo, holding the notes for their proper length and their full value, correct phrasing, and playing the dynamics or the volume changes. For example, here's the way a lot of beginners will play Oralee. What did you notice about the way I played that song? Well, hopefully one thing you noticed is that my tempo wasn't even. That's a basic part of section playing, because how do you think it sounds if 6 trumpeters play the same song, but each using their own tempo? So you have to watch your conductor and really learn to listen to the other players to stay together. Also, notice that apostrophe above the first G half note. That's called a phrase mark or a breath mark. Now that breath mark tells you where you should take a breath so that you don't take it in the middle of a musical phrase. Think of a musical phrase the same way you might think of a sentence. You wouldn't say, "John, why don't you come over to my house? We'll have soda and pie." No, you'll make 2 phrases and you'll say, "John, why don't you come over to my house? We'll have soda and pie." Right? So that phrase mark helps you identify the musical phrases where you should take a breath. So what if I improve those 2 things, the tempo and the phrasing? I'm going to use my metronome to help me keep a steady tempo, and I'm going to only breathe where there's a phrase mark. It's an improvement, right? But did you notice also that I didn't give all the notes their full value? Sometimes the style of music you play is going to be defined by staccato or separated notes, like in, maybe Jingle Bells. Right? But this is a legato style ballad, and the notes are long and connected. That last dotted half note especially sounded like a long quarter note the way I played it. Now it sounds basic to say, but every note lasts until the beginning of the next note or the next rest. That means that if this is my tempo, then this is a quarter note. And this would be a half note. Notice how I carry that all the way to the beginning of the third beat. That dotted half note is going to be. And then a whole note you'll hold all the way to the first beat of the next measure. Now don't cut the note short. The only time you're going to cut a note short is, like I said, in Jingle Bells, if the style calls for it, or if there's a phrase mark or a breath mark and you need to take a quick breath, just like after that first half note in RLE. And of course that means we hold that dotted half note all the way out to beat 4. Did you notice that? Listen again. Then in addition to holding the notes for their full value, there are dynamic markings that tell us how loud to play. Your page on Playing with Style shows you some dynamic markings. From the softest to the loudest is pianissimo or PP, then mezzo piano or medium soft. Medium loud is MF, that's mezzo forte, and then forte is loud or FF for fortissimo. And that's really loud. Sometimes you might see some extreme markings like PPP or FFF, but that's not really so common. There's also a crescendo marking, which means get louder, and the opposite is decrescendo or get softer. You'll notice that in RLE, it starts at mezzo piano or medium soft, and then it crescendos in the middle and builds up to forte, and then it finishes again at mezzo piano or MP. Now one final note that you see in RLE is the RIT in the very last measure. That's an abbreviation for retard or ritardando, and it means gradually slow down. It's going to sound like this. Now let's try playing this whole song together, just like a trumpet section. Since there's no director, I'm going to use my metronome to help us stay together. Now remember, take a breath only at the phrase marks, and be sure not to start too loud so you have room to build in the middle, and hold all your notes for the full value. Now one more thing, that phrase that starts on the second line is a really long one, so be sure to get a good big breath right before that line. Here we go. One, two, 1, 2, 3. And did you notice how playing the dynamics really helped add some feeling to the music? Because beginning players tend to really underestimate the difference between dynamic markings and maybe even ignore them altogether, my philosophy on playing dynamics is to overemphasize them. A great way to know how loud to play is to play too loud. Same goes with playing soft. Your director is going to let you know if you're too loud or too soft. But until they tell you, make a really big distinction between the forte and the piano. Now one last note about section playing. You're learning right now how to play better than other beginning trumpet players, which is nice, but it really presents a problem in section playing. Do you know what that is? Remember that I said your goal as a section is to play together. Everyone at the same tempo, the same volume, holding all the notes the same. Well, if you're the only one playing the full value of a half note, especially at the end of a phrase, you're going to really stick out. Now, even though you're right, you may be the only one in that whole group of novice trumpet players, which makes you sound wrong. Now, my advice is first do it anyway, and it's going to help the conductor notice that the others need to do it like you. You could also teach the rest of the section the right way, but you need to make sure you've got the right relationship and a good rapport with the rest of the section, or you're going to come off as really a know-it-all, and pretty soon they'll hate you not just because you're beautiful, but because you're smart too. Maybe a better way is to just by chance mention this cool little program that you picked up from etrumpetLessons.com that's helping you learn so much so quickly, and maybe suggest they go and get that same package. Anyway, so that's it on section playing. Now, solo playing uses those same principles of accuracy that you rely on in section playing, but you also have more flexibility to bring in really your own interpretation. The amount you play around with a piece of music is really going to depend on the style. So a march, or maybe a processional for a ceremony, for example, generally needs to be played straight tempo, really strict. On the other hand, if you're playing a ballad, you can really experiment with the way you play, and you don't have to hit every note exactly on the beat. Just like speaking a sentence, you speed up and then sometimes you slow down the tempo, even for emphasis. First, you want to identify the phrases and try to play them in one breath. If your music doesn't already have phrase marks, you can write those in yourself to help remind you of the phrases. You can also be a little less strict with playing the notes exactly on the beat. Now, take a listen to this. Did you notice how every note is not right on the beat? Now, one reason Elvis had so much success with this melody is because of the way he phrased it. It's a really simple tune, but he was just a master at pouring emotion into it. Look up Love Me Tender on the internet or on YouTube and find a clip of Elvis doing this song, and pay attention to his phrasing. Now, there's several songs included in this program that you can really practice your phrasing with. A couple that you might have fun with, though, are How Great Thou Art or Londonderry Air. Now, the range on those might be a little challenging, so you can play just the parts in your range or find some other tunes that you like and really pay attention to the ways that you can bring out some expression. Now, I've had some teachers tell me just play what you feel. Make up your own song, even if you don't know the notes. There's lots of things you can do to really work with practicing the decrescendos and the crescendos and building and pulling back and varying tempos. Now, that Playing with Style page also outlines a couple of other kinds of things that composers are going to put on a page of music to help with interpretation. There are a whole slew of tempo markings, and some of them are listed there for you. The problem with using words, though, to describe a tempo is that even though they're helpful to describe the spirit of a piece of music, they're still subjective. So lots of times you'll see something like quarter note equals 120, and that tells you a specific metronome tempo. Articulation markings are also going to help you with the style of music. Staccato means to play short and separated notes. Legato is long and connected, like in RLE, and that's indicated by a little line under the notes. The next sign is an accent, and it means to hold the notes for their full value, but accent the attack. Then marcato is that caret type symbol, and that's kind of a combination between an accent and staccato. We'll get more into articulation styles in the video on articulation and tonguing, so be sure and watch that video if you haven't already. So you see, there are lots of musical markings and things you can do with phrasing to help you get beyond just playing the right notes. Now, as a quick review, when you're playing in a section, be as accurate as possible with the music and exaggerate the dynamic and artistic markings. Watch for phrase marks and treat musical phrases just like you would speak a sentence. When you're playing alone, don't be afraid to play around with the dynamics and even the melody to bring out some emotion. Now, of course, one of the challenges of a beginning player is just getting the right notes. That's why beginner level songs don't really have much room for interpretation sometimes. There's not much you can do with And it's a real challenge to stir the emotions of people with even your very best rendition of Mary Had a Little Lamb. Work with orally and also try some of the other songs in your trumpet workbook to see what you can do with them musically. I also encourage you to visit a music store, even online, and check out some of the easy songbooks that have the kind of music that you like. And regardless of the songs you play, don't be afraid to experiment with phrases and try to bring out some emotion. Now, even though this lesson covers a lot, I don't think these concepts are too advanced for new players because I really want you to get past that beginner sound and understand that it's really not that complicated to really make music and really get beyond just playing the right notes. So remember to play with emotion, make some music, and have fun.